Welcome to the Biltmore Church Podcast. Our church exists to glorify God by making disciples who reach up, reach in, and reach out. And this podcast is one of the ways that we do that together. So we are coming to the end of season 7 of the podcast. But before we close out, we wanted to do a special Ask Pastor Bruce Frank episode. And so excited about having a chance to just sit down with him and ask him some of your questions and help you get to know his heart just a little bit better. And so if we haven't met yet, my name is Michelle Myers. I serve on our staff here. And so whether you are new to our church or you've been here for years, our hope is that you leave here today encouraged. I think you'll definitely laugh and you'll learn something too. All right, Pastor Bruce, here we go. We're going to start out with a game that is maybe a slightly aggressive version of Would You Rather. So I'm going to give you 2 things, and you're going to have to choose between 2 terrible options. But my goal is that these are going to be the hardest questions that we're going to hit this whole time, okay?
So both options are bad.
Both options are bad.
Picking which is less bad.
Yes, and the word neither is not allowed. If you say neither, then both come true.
Okay.
In my fictional world.
Both come true.
Yes, okay. Okay, here we go. So Texas Tech, your precious Red Raiders, they never win another game, or you have to own a cat named Longhorn.
Oh, Red Raiders can lose all the games they want to before that's going to happen. Yeah,
I actually thought that would go that way.
That's not hard. That's not hard.
Good.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Diet Coke is banned from the shelves.
Okay.
Or every time you go to Starbucks, you have to order the girliest thing on the menu. Like I'm talking pink drink. This one's harder.
They can ban Diet Coke.
They can ban Diet Coke?
You said it's
Okay.
both are bad,
Okay.
but I'm not going and ordering a macchiato frappuccino with cinnamon,
Is Coke Zero acceptable? Is that an okay replacement?
Not really.
No.
No.
Okay.
No.
Just curious.
I just go to some hard stuff.
Okay. All right. All right, here we go. You can't listen to country music for a year.
Okay.
Or you have to trade in your truck for a Prius.
Cannot listen to country music for a year. I'm not driving a Prius. Please, Lord, don't make it so.
Okay, there's just 2 more. Your steak is always prepared well done, or you have to trade spots with someone on the worship team for a Sunday.
I'm not trading spots with a worship team member. That's the biggest fear I would have to actually sing. So I'll get you. I can take a steak well done.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's not hard. That's not hard.
All right, last one.
Okay.
You have to go back to preaching every Sunday in a suit and tie. Or
what's the or?
Your least fashionable brother gets to dress you every time you preach.
Oh goodness, that's the hardest one because I know which is the least fashionable.
Do you want to throw a brother under the bus?
No, I love them all the same, but James does not have any fashion sense. Even though he's
Sorry, James, it's not personal. It's just a game.
Say it again. I'm flustered now.
You have to go back to preaching in a suit and tie every Sunday, or James picks your wardrobe.
I would still let James pick it. I would just coach him.
Okay.
I would coach him up a little bit.
He's teachable.
He is
love that.
He's as teachable as I am.
Okay.
I'll just leave it at that.
Great. That means he's super teachable.
Yeah,
that's what I take
100%.
from that. Yes.
Yep, that's what I meant. That's what I meant.
Okay. You did really well on that.
You were gentle.
Good
you
job.
were easy. That
Thank
was not
you.
as hard as I was led to believe.
Who said that I created those questions? Do you really think that I'm that savage?
Those were not savage. I could write harder ones. I appreciate anyway, that's good.
Okay.
I don't mean to throw the Red Raiders under the bus. They're going to win more games, but
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Good. Okay. That was fun. All right. Into the main discussion, asking just some of the questions that were asked from our people.
They were good questions.
There were some good ones.
Yep.
Okay. This one is, how did you know that you were being called into the ministry, and did you run from the calling for a while?
Great question. First of all, I didn't really run from it, but most of that was based on ignorance and naivete. If I knew now what I knew, if I knew then what I knew now, I probably would have done like many guys do, especially folks that are kind of grew up in the church and maybe they saw some different things and they're like, I don't want to do that. And so I didn't grow up in church and didn't really even know what a call was. So I didn't have any scar tissue. I didn't have any of that stuff to scare me because I just didn't know anything about it. But in a general sense, without going too long, because there's some questions that are going to take some time, called to be a believer as a 17-year-old. And then I was probably 22 as a finance major in college just because I didn't know it. I was just growing as a Christian. But then I began to see people that had invested full time, primarily in a parachurch. So it started to dawn on me. I was actually interviewing with banks, as exciting as that sounds, was interviewing with banks. And in a matter of 2 days, God took all the desire to do that away. There's nothing wrong with being a banker if that's God's call in your life. But for me, I was like, I cannot see me putting the next 40 years of my life into giving people loans or whatever. And then replace that with a desire. And what I now look back on is like, all right, that's he clarified that call. It was initially to go work with college students at a parachurch organization. And then God just refined that down to pastoring in his local church.
Was that more at seminary when you felt like you got more clarity?
It was actually in college. No, it was at the end, the call to ministry, and then I had to understand what a call was. Again, I didn't know any of that language. Looking back, I can see the handprints all over it, but I didn't know what was going on. It's like in real time, I didn't really understand it. But then had some people that kind of understood ministry and calling and discipled me in that aspect of it. I went to seminary. We had this discussion actually on the retreat I was at recently. I mean, literally my first staff job, not having any. I mean, the guys I roomed with initially, one of their dads had been president of the convention, so he had a lot of connections, and he goes and does an internship at, big church, and the other guy was doing an internship at big church, and I didn't know any of this stuff. I literally went to the placement office as a first-year seminary student, and back then they didn't, I'm sure it's all automated now, but they literally had a bulletin board with 3x5 index cards of churches that needed people, and I went and picked the one. I don't even know how I discerned it from there. I just picked one that was close. Yeah, it was almost, it was like an hour and 15 minutes west of Fort Worth, and that was the first staff position, and guy was super gracious, great older pastor who was like, hey, preach all you want, do the student ministry.
That's awesome.
Man, we grew that thing from 4 students to 14 students. So it's like where the magazine's writing up that percentage growth, all that stuff. So it was awesome. It really was awesome. We've been extremely blessed.
That's awesome. I love that. Okay, what does the Bible say or teach about anxiety? I've heard so many people say if you have anxiety, you don't have faith.
Yeah, and that's a great question. And it's not as easy to answer. We'll deal with a little bit of it, and I think 3 weeks in this series, questions Jesus asks, because that's one of the ones, why are you so anxious? A lot of it's easier to understand when you realize, all right, what is anxiety? How do we define it? And what are the Bible words for it? You see a lot of teaching about it, and you usually see it kind of juxtaposed against trusting the Lord. All right. And so you take, you take something maybe as easy like Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, kind of a classic passage. You take Jesus' teaching in Matthew 6 about look at the birds of the air, doesn't the Lord take care of them? Look at the teaching in the epistles like Philippians. And so there's a lot of teaching on it, but I would say there's a lot of degrees. We usually think of anxiety as concern, and concern in the Bible is not wrong. Concern is like, especially if you have a responsibility. Responsibility is a real thing. I want to be concerned about it. I want to know it. I want to work hard. But the word anxiety in the Bible used a lot of times is actually the word to strangle. It's the idea it just starts to crush you because you're just it's almost like fear. I mean, doubt, fear, anxiety, those are cousins of each other. And so, it's not that you don't have any faith, but many, many times the question in 100 different scenarios a year, am I going to trust God in this or not? Am I going to trust God? Am I going to trust God? And we'll see it a little bit even this week. Am I going to, if God asks you to do something that's a little out of the ordinary, we'll talk this week a little bit about the sort of the theology or the fake theology that, hey, if it's easy, God must be in it. If it's hard, God must not be in it. How many times we talk about, well, God opened the door. Well, the enemy can open a door too. See Jonah. There was a very convenient way for him to run from God, and it was super easy. But in God's way was not going to be easy. So all that being said, anxiety is you're going to wrestle between, am I going to trust God or not trust God? And so I don't think there's like one thing that you like, oh, I'm never going to deal with anxiety for the rest of my life. I mean, there are seasons that you have got to lean in hard. And you see, like the book of Psalms, you see the struggle. I mean, there is a struggle up and down, and am I going to trust God? So it's going back and forth over and over and over again. So it's not you don't have any faith, to the listener who asked the question, but it is a battle between faith, trust. Am I going to trust God, or am I going to, trust my circumstances or my resources? So again, the good news is you're not alone. The bad news is it's going to be a battle till you go to heaven.
Absolutely. And to spin it, like if you are good at anxiety, you can be really good at prayer. Because prayer, desperate prayer, the kind that we've been talking about, is kind of worrying in God's direction. And so just take all the things that you're anxious about, and you can be a prayer warrior.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Okay, I want to preface, I did not submit this question, but could have. As a self-admitted control freak, I am curious what verses you lean on when you feel that desire to direct rather than trust God's plan.
Well, I was thinking about this in the car yesterday, in the Prius. Just kidding, in the truck yesterday. I mean, there's a bunch of verses. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 is the normal one. Proverbs or Psalm 29, 29, 18. I would have despaired if I did not believe I would see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. So there's tons and tons of verses. And if you need verses, just Google, just put in, put ChatGPT, just verses on trust. Would be, you'll come up with, there'll be 100.
Right.
All right. And a lot of it, I was doing just a little sermon prep. A lot of it is your view of God. So for me, when my understanding of how big God is grows, then almost automatically, it's not necessarily a verse, but it's just a reminder that, God is so much bigger than any of this. But what I was thinking about in the truck is, I think, as I've gotten older, it's a little bit easier. Still very much like to control, but it's a little bit easier as you get older, I think, because you see seasons back and there's certain situations that it dawns on you at some point, I'm going to control what I can control. But there's stuff I can't. I can control the effort. I can control the attitude. I cannot control most of the outcomes. And that's almost in every, whether it be your kids or your health, to some degree, even your finances, all that kind of stuff. You do what you're supposed to do. You can budget, you can eat well, you can disciple your kids, but you can't control if the stock market crashes. You cannot control. How many times do you see somebody who's like a marathoner who eats right and all that stuff, and then they die at 40 of a heart attack? Now that doesn't mean that you don't do what you can do.
Correct.
But I think as you get older, you realize like there's just some stuff the outcome of which I cannot control.
Yeah. I turn Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 into questions because I can usually get to the root of it of, am I trusting God with all of my heart? Am I leaning on my own understanding? Am I acknowledging God in all that I'm doing? And do I believe that he can make my path straight? If I just parse that out and make myself answer those questions, I do that frequently. So,
and a little tip: if that's like have one of those that comes up on your home screen.
Oh, that's good.
Because there's that Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 would be a classic one. I just put an app on my phone yesterday. I got to still get it where it's supposed to show me a verse for the day on the home screen. Oh, that's
awesome.
And it was asking me my topics and all that stuff I wanted to come up, and I'm like, I don't want you to know this yet. But I did say I put trust or something like that.
There you go. That's a good
one. So I think
one.
Proverbs 3 is going to be the one that shows up starting, I think, tomorrow.
It'll pop up.
It will pop up.
Okay. This one, I wish that we could answer this one with a hug, but it says, how do we handle it when we're unsure if a loved one genuinely knows Jesus or just knows about him?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard you can't judge a person's heart. People ask, I mean, that's a pretty common question, and it kind of, dovetails with everything from eternal security to assurance, all those things, which are not the same, but they're close. But I think the Bible clearly teaches if a person is genuinely saved, you can't lose that. One preacher said, if we could lose our salvation, we would. So, wow. If we could, we would.
Yes.
But he's the one that saved us. He's the one that adopted us. He's the one that made us a son or a daughter, those kind of things. So he's not going to undo that. But obviously the Bible also says, there's going to be fruit that's visible. But I think for the listener, it's super careful. We're not called to be fruit inspectors. and
That's
say,
good.
okay, that. And you can't tell you can't tell Johnny's heart.
Right.
I think what you can do is, as best you can, pray for that person. As open as they are. Because what are you going to do if they're not? I mean, God's going to have to reveal to that person, you don't know me, you just know about me. Now he might use that person, but it's not. I wouldn't sit there and. Again, it depends on a relationship. If it's somebody you love, some pointed questions can be good. Right. Especially if they're living in a lifestyle completely contrary to the gospel. You just say, there's a lot of questions you can ask. Is like, hey, ask them, hey, you're a Christ follower? I am. Kind of tell me how this is, this behavior is kind of jihiving with your confession of Christ.
Right.
Or even softer, invite them to a Bible teaching church and let the Holy Spirit do what the Holy Spirit does. Because, again, we make terrible Holy Spirits, but we can be vessels. That's different. We can be instruments.
That's good. I just saw something the other day on the idea of an instrument, and it was basically reminding us that we are instruments. So it's like, you are useless in the hands of the wrong. Like, it requires a power source, and it requires a master who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, you're an instrument. You're not the player.
That's
you're
right.
Just, you're the vessel.
Okay, I love this one. What is the best way to explain the Trinity to my granddaughter who's 10 years old, which is probably how we all need to understand the Trinity anyway?
It is, but every illustration I've ever heard of, and I've heard them all. I think I've heard them all. I've heard them, it's like a 3-leaf clover, one root, three. I've heard it, God is like water. It's water, ice, and vapor. So it is not hard, even unintentionally, to start to bleed into heresy. It's not hard at all. Somebody said, you try to explain the Trinity, you'll lose your mind. You try to explain away the Trinity, you'll lose your soul. And there's actually some degree of truth to that. So how do you explain it to your 10-year-old? That's a good question. I would stay simple. I would try to avoid the illustrations, because at some point they all break down. Yep. There's really nothing like it. There's nothing like it. It's one God in 3 persons.
That's right.
Father, Son, Holy Spirit. So as far as illustrations, you can use them and they can be helpful. But as she or he, the 10-year-old, if they get older, you don't want that to be imprinted on their mind. It is obviously one of the more difficult truths in the Bible, but it is clearly taught from the Great Commission to many, not formulas, but many sentences in the Bible. It talks about, one God in 3 persons, all equal, but different. So, I would just teach you that way. We have one God, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Somebody said, what is it? God, I'm going to mess this one up. The Father came up with a plan, the Son executed the plan, and then the Spirit brings the plan to fruition in a person's life. So, again, I meant to come up with a better answer. So I would try not to get fancy. I would say there's one God in 3 persons. The main fault, if you want to look at how heresies happen, normally it is making the Son or the Spirit not God. And that is heresy. Yeah. That's not a podcast 2-minute answer, but
no, that's a good one. And I think too, just remembering that for your kids, for the times when you have to point them toward faith and not necessarily an answer that makes sense, just gives them an opportunity for their faith to grow. And kids are probably better at that than we are.
And it's okay if as a parent you're like, I don't really totally understand how this works, but here's what our Bible teaches.
Yes,
it's okay, a parent or a preacher. It's like, I don't really know how this all works. There are some mysteries that are clearly taught in the Bible that you can't fully explain. Even in another one, be the sovereignty of God, the free will of man. It's like, how do you explain those exactly? So
that's good. Okay, how can I help my friend who is deconstructing her faith?
Yeah,
I feel like she's going down a slippery slope.
No, this is going to take some time. And I actually, when I saw that question, I jotted some notes down just to keep it within the confines of time.
Oh yeah.
And some people don't even know what deconstructing is. It's kind of a buzzword, but if you're not, if you don't run in those circles, then you might not know. And as we were talking, before the broadcast, deconstruction can mean 3 or 4 different things to different people. So for clarity, you just, jotting some stuff down. I think what the ladies or whoever put the question in is asking is, a person, she said she's going down the slippery slope, which what I mean is she's leaving what would be called Orthodox Christianity, basic Bible doctrine that the church has taught and stood on for at least 2,000 years, and getting away from some of the fundamentals. But a couple of just observations on that. So again, the definition, what I think she's talking about is leaving. Usually it's people who maybe have been brought up in the church. That's their upbringing. They got taught certain things. And then Orthodox Christianity, basic Bible Christianity, does not line up with their values anymore, their understanding anymore. And so they're like, I'm not sure how to do that. And there's some famous people that have done that. I mean, obviously, years ago, there was a guy named Rob Bell. He was kind of the first, I don't even think that we used that term back then, but you're like, all right, he's jumped the shark. He's left. He's not like, these are not minor distinctions. These are fundamental differences in Bible teaching. So, and by the way, and even in that realm, some of the people who've quote unquote deconstructed, they would still describe themselves as Christians, and some wouldn't. Some do. It's like a Jen Hatmaker. She would describe herself as a Christian, even though she has left Orthodox Christianity. What's the guy's name? Is it Josh Harris? I mean, he's a guy that he wouldn't even describe himself as a Christian anymore. They both would say they have deconstructed, but so all that background. Let me. Couple of thoughts here. First of all, I think you do have normal doubts. Doubts can be very normal. Doubts and deconstruction are not the same. I think it was Spurgeon that said doubt is like a foot poised. It can either accelerate your growth, you can step forward, or you can step forward in faith and your faith comes out stronger. Or it's a step backwards, and if you take enough steps backwards, you're kind of out of the sheepfold, or at least you're out of Orthodox Christianity. So some normal doubts people struggle with, things like, why is there evil and suffering in the world? How can a good God allow people to go to hell? Those are kind of your common ones. The good news is the Bible talks about them all the time. I mean, read the questions that the psalmist had, that Moses had, that David had. They all had these questions. Habakkuk, the whole book is about a bunch of questions. So it's not wrong to have the questions. Even, what was it I was looking at? Like the feeding of the 5,000, or one of the accounts of feeding of the 5,000, so everybody wants to come and make Jesus the king. And so every once in a while, Jesus thins the herd. He kind of culls the herd a little bit. And in one of those accounts, I think it's John's account, where he goes into a teaching about, hey, you're going to have to follow me, you're going to have to eat my flesh and drink my blood.
Yep. That's a hard one.
And then people are like, what? And people, and the text actually says, and the people start to leave. That's like, that's a teaching too far for them. And even some of the disciples, I mean, if you did it nowadays, we'd say, hey, boss, you need to kind of pare that back, or you need to make some explanation. You're just talking about symbolically or something. But he never does that. He doesn't do that. But then I think it's Peter that says, Jesus says, are you going to leave now too? You're going to leave now too? Meaning that was something, I mean, Jesus knew the answer, but they're on that. They're like, what is this this teaching is very hard. I'm not understanding this. And then I think it's Peter that says, where are we going to go?
Right.
You have the words of eternal life. And so understanding it is okay to wrestle with doubts. But what Peter was saying is, listen, we're just going to take our doubts and we're still going to follow you, which is a great way to deal with it. And one last thing before we kind of I'm going to give some symptoms, I think. Some deconstruction can actually be helpful depending on how if you grew up in church, you might have been taught some traditions. I mean, in a proper term, now think about the way that Jesus, again, I hate to use these terms, but for clarity, he deconstructed some of the traditions that were prevalent. Not Bible, but traditions that people had added to the Bible. I mean, the Sermon on the Mount's classic. You've heard it said this, but I say to you this.
Right.
Or his, you all follow the commandments of men when they were trying to cut out their parents, that kind of stuff. So there's a proper way to wrestle with your faith. Some of it's as simple as somebody get raised in the church and sort of borrowed their parents' faith for a while, and then they're in the process of owning it personally. And that can be super, super helpful. And to some degree, you got to do that anyway. At some point, it's got to go from, hey, this is my family's faith, to this is my personal faith. And usually, you got to wrestle with a handful of things. But, again, this is going to be the longest answer. In a bad way, it can lead to apostasy. It can lead to unbelief. It can lead to atheism. It can lead to all of that. This is probably going to take a few people off, and they would actually not. This is my observation. This is some of it's Bible, some of it's Bruce, but just having done this for a while and having watched quote unquote deconstruction, it's kind of people talk about it's the last 10 years, but even going back, doubts have been there since the disciples. But I think my observation has been that deconstruction is typically not the root issue. It's typically a symptom of something else. And here's what I mean by that. Almost every time I've seen the person wrestling with what we're defining as the deep deconstruction, there's several common things that are there. Not all of these, and sometimes the person doesn't even realize it. But I jotted down 3 or 4. The first one that is almost always there is some type of hurt. What I mean by that is a lot of times it's quote unquote church hurt. Now, again, we don't have time for that, but I mean, if you're part of the body, you're going to get hurt at some point. Now, that's not, it's just normal. It's called life. That's called dealing with, you're living on planet Earth with a bunch of sinners.
Brokenness.
But I think what most of the time you can look back at is church hurt is maybe a preacher you looked up to. I mean, and then they have a mass, especially one that maybe helped the Lord use to feed your faith. I'm thinking about a particular apologetic guy that was very high up and, and helped a lot of people. And he did a lot of good stuff, but he had a double life going on.
Right.
And that shattered a lot of people. And a lot of times they're like, well, if that's, or it could be as simple as just hypocrisy. They saw some person at their church who was a deacon or a leader or whatever. And then that person didn't end up being who they thought they were, and they're like, if that guy's like that, whole thing is, bogus. I think what some people also, it's the hurt that they actually have from, we call it unanswered prayer, but unanswered prayer ends up being you're hurt and angry at God. I mean, there's famous people. Ted Turner's a classic example of somebody. It's like he prayed and prayed and prayed. I think it was his sister that she would get wealth, and his sister, I think, passed, if I remember it correctly. And he's like, if that's the kind of God, if you're not going to answer this simple prayer, then I don't want anything to do with you. And he quote unquote deconstructed. Here's one that bad teaching is a reason for deconstructing. And when I mean bad teaching, sometimes it's preachers. But Michelle, I was sitting there thinking about where deconstruction really started happening is when you could get any kind of, it used to be you actually had to have some kind of credentials or something that said, what you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah. And now with the last 20 years with self-publishing and blogs and all this kind of stuff, you don't have to. Nope. All you got to do is be, and if you're popular and winsome, or not even winsome, if you are even edgy, whatever you do. And I'm thinking about a particular lady who was a very popular blogger and had horrendous hermeneutics. Hermeneutics is just Bible interpretation. And she basically, her big deal was, she went stuff the church has known for 2,000 years that the Bible's real clear out, primarily like sexual ethics. She's like, that's not what the Bible means. And she influenced like a lot of people. And anyway, so again, you can get any kind of teaching. It's really what the enemy did right at the start. Did God really say? Did God really say? Did God really say this about marriage? Did God really say this about sexual ethics? Did God really say this about gender? Did God really say this about, that's been around forever. It's just you can get this at your fingertips now, as where before you had to, you had to have something to publish a book, some kind of credentials. All right, a couple more, and this is going to, my observation is many people who deconstruct when I'm talking to them, if I just pull the layer back a little bit, they're usually going, and they're justifying their sin. It's a zipper problem. It's a lot of the time. I don't know how to put it any more blunt. I mean, it's not 9 times out of 10, 7 times out of 10, especially if I'm dealing with a college student or whatever. All I got to do is, if I just talk with them a little bit longer, they're sleeping with their boyfriend, they're sleeping with their girlfriend. And to try to get away from the shame and guilt, they're like, well, God didn't really say it, or what does Paul know about marriage? Or, he was a single guy or whatever. Yeah. And then the last one, and then I'll try to answer the question actually, but I think it needed some build up. And I hate to use this term because this term can be misunderstood as well, but I'm going to use it anyway. And that's toxic empathy is a legit deal. It's the idea that I feel, and especially in an oppressor kind of mindset that has been very strong in our colleges for a long time, that basically if you're the oppressed, however you want to define that, you can do, the ends justify the means. You can do whatever you want to, especially against the oppressor. Right. And so if you look at a group that you deem as being victims, what is the ultimate way to help them is you identify with them. Well, it's like, I feel bad for them. I'm going to spend time with them. Well, my ultimate way to help them is to be just like them. That's to me, that's toxic empathy. So how do you help your friend? I would say, number one, pray for. And also, I used to say it a little more flippantly, but the more you learn to pray, God can do more in 2 seconds than you can do with all the greatest apologetic answers that you possibly have. Second thing I would do is answer their legit questions.
Right.
Answer their legit questions. If they have a question about biblical, trustworthiness, or, did this text mean this? Then, right now, there's common grace called ChatGPT or Google. You can find a very good answer to that. It's not like the church all of a sudden for 2,000 years is like, oh, oops, we got that whole thing wrong.
Right.
The greatest minds and translators and all that, they've looked at this stuff. And then thirdly, I would say, as best you can, focus on the resurrection and biblical trustworthiness. Because even if they have an answer, like why does God allow suffering? Or why would God, what about the Syrian refugees? Or all those things. Those are legit questions. Or what about violence in the Old Testament? There's tons of those. If you can get to the point where it's like, okay, if Jesus came up out of the grave, if he conquered death, I might not know the answer, but there is an answer.
Right.
If the tomb's empty, there is an answer. And it at least is humbling enough to go, all right, if he came up out of the grave, I don't know why. There's some questions I have. I have doubts, I have questions. I have questions about a lot of stuff. But if he came up out of the grave, there's an answer to those questions, whether I ever see them here on earth or not. So those would be my 3 recommendations for her. Pray for him. Answer legit questions. If you can't find it on common stuff, then ask one of your pastors and they'll get an answer to you quick.
I have 2 go-tos, and I'm curious to know what you think about these. So the first thing that I do to help me know how to pray for them is I'll ask them, hey, when you're done deconstructing, is your hope and prayer that you find your way back to Jesus? And so that helps me to kind of know where their heart is at in it so that I can pray for them. And then the second thing, because most of the time the people that I see deconstruct their faith start losing fruits of the Spirit. I don't see more joy. I don't see more love. I don't see more patience. And so I'll ask them about that. I'll be like, hey, do you still want these things in your life to be growing?
For sure.
And they're going to say yes. We want those things.
At least to the second one.
Right.
I'm not sure. I've noticed that I don't know if they even know. They're so oftentimes, because what I just mentioned, Michelle, they don't even know. And to the person who asked the question, I wouldn't sit there and go, hey, I heard on this podcast that these are the 4 reasons you're doing this.
Right.
Number one, it might be one of them versus all 4. It could be a mixture, but more than likely, they don't even know, much less do they want to actually admit that that's the case. Because again, they might not even be clear in their own mind. It could be anger at a parent that was a hypocrite or something like that. But that's much deeper that God's going to have to reveal to them. But yeah, for sure. But to your point, point them back to Jesus, his reality. It's not a blind faith. The Bible's not he does not ask you to take a blind leap of faith. Even the Bible was written by eyewitnesses of eyewitnesses. They're historical documents of fulfilled prophecy. Again, it's not like I'm just going to take a leap in the dark. God doesn't ask you to. He's like, love me with all your heart, soul, and your mind. So it's fine to engage your mind and if you're the vehicle, give them good answers to their good questions.
Yeah, and hard questions are always easier to have when they're hypothetical. And so when you get to ask that question about the fruits of the Spirit, it's this opportunity to say, hey, if I start to see these dwindling in your life, do you want me to tell you? And so it's kind of inviting that open door to continue having the conversation with them.
For sure. And definitely, continue the conversation. For sure.
Absolutely. Okay, this is a fun one. If you could sit down with every Biltmore Church member one-on-one, what would you want to say to them or talk about?
Man, I try to say it. I try to say it collectively every Sunday, but the cliche answer would be to just elaborate on your loved and sent. But I think if you just, I would try to make sure, depending on the time. If I have 30 seconds, I'd probably say one thing. If I have an hour, I'd say another thing. But I'd want them to have a clear understanding of the gospel, in meaning that not just cultural Christianity, because here in the South, you still have remnants of that.
True.
And they just have a clear understanding of the gospel and how that impacts them. That'd be the first thing that I would do. That'd be the 60-second answer.
That's so good. Okay, you've been shepherding this church for almost 2 decades.
Ugh.
I'm sorry.
Old. No.
You started when you were 5. So
exactly.
So what is one thing that keeps you grounded for the long haul?
I was talking about some guys of this yesterday because God's been super gracious to our church. He really has. There's been so much protection and so much grace. We got a great team. There's always a challenge. It seems like, if once you thought, I think I've said this on a podcast before, if there was a time when at least personally I started to believe some of what, because you gotta be careful. You don't want the critics to get to your heart, and you don't want the fans to get to your head.
That's right. Oh.
And it was probably, we don't have a lot of critics. We have some outside critics, but our church is super gracious.
Yeah.
We said it before. It's, but if there was a time getting a little cocky, was probably 2019, early 2020, and then we know what happened in March of 2020. And it was humbling, it was clarifying, it was hard, it was all those things. But I tell guys, whether it's good or bad, as far as your season is, like right now we're in an awesome season, great team, great momentum, all that kind of jazz. The X factor in ministry for sure, is your walk with the Lord.
Absolutely.
And it scares me to death to think. I heard a guy, a friend of mine, actually a pastor of mine back, 100 years ago. He's the one that pointed out that you either humble yourself or God will humble you. And I guess I'm too proud to want God to humble me. I'd rather do it myself. I'm
right.
like, man, I know it's easier if I do it than if he does it.
Man. Okay, so in that same vein, what are some of your favorite signs of spiritual health in a church?
There's a bunch of them. There's a bunch of them. And it kind of depends on the church, because usually churches are like, if you look at the churches in Revelation that are indicative of other ones, most churches have some strong suits.
Right.
Most churches have strong suits, and almost every church has some areas of improvement that they can do. So one by itself does not stand. So it's almost like a three or four-legged chair. It's like if you just, if you got one leg on this, if you think about it, like, for example, evangelism. There was a time when the mission of God, I even look back at my ministry where you can't get over-consumed with the mission of God. But what you can do is do the mission of God at the expense of, let's say, for the glory of God. I would call that the seeker movement. To some degree, it's like we're going to do whatever it takes, but sometimes it's like, all right, does this glorify God? Not that the mission of God and the glory of God are distinctively different, but obviously some of those ones are, biblical maturation. I think one of the keys that, if I had to pick one, it's are there disciples making disciples? If I had to pick just one, because what that provides me is both width and depth. That's actually is talking about.
That's really good.
If we have, it's like what you're doing with the 2x2. That number one, that is providing depth, but the goal for it is not just Bible fatheads that know all the answers. They're also the ones that I got to make other disciples. So that to me is the most Great Commission balanced. That I'm making disciples. When you look at the Great Commission, it's like, go make disciples. I don't think he was talking about go get people that already know their Bible really well and give them more Bible. Yeah. It starts at the front. Go make disciples. That's a part like conversion. I'm always going to lean toward conversion because not growing up in church, I saw churches that were like a country club family reunion, and I was an outsider. Yeah. So I know what it's like, and now I'm an insider for years now, obviously. But I'm making disciples, which includes depth and breadth.
That's so good. I got convicted a couple of years ago because I do think like depth is more fun and more natural for me personally.
Me as well.
And I had this moment when I think the Lord must have given me this phrase because I don't think that I would have been this blunt with myself. But I was like, I do not want to stand before the Lord someday. And I don't think that he's going to be like, good job. You made a bunch of saved people smarter. Like, I do not want that to be the case.
Well, so. And that is, I think if you had to look at just churches in general, then what you are, the one most churches just statistically end up, you have some that are great at conversion, but no depth at all. Just no depth. I think churches like that, by the way, I think their desire is right. I think their desire is they see the church as like Paul going to Athens. They see the church as Athens. They see it as the marketplace. And you can do that. I don't see that being supported that much through the rest of the New Testament, but I can understand it and I can appreciate it in many, many ways. And some of those churches they feed other churches, they're a great front door. So what you're trying to have is balance. But again, what you're doing with 2x2 and what we try to do as a church is realize that maturity is not just you knowing a bunch of stuff.
That's right.
Maturity is you reproducing yourself. And if that's happening, then a lot of other good stuff tends to happen.
So good. Okay, let's get into some fun ones. What is one thing that you think our people would be surprised to know about you?
Man, I don't know. I try to share most of it from the pulpit. Man.
Like, are there any hidden talents?
It's not talent, but I'm just going to Texas Tech. I'm a decent two-stepper.
Wow. You know, of all the things I thought you were going to say, dance did not make my bingo card.
Now, two-stepping and dancing it is dancing, but there's some dancing you're not going to see me do. But two-stepping is a comfort level.
Your Texas is showing.
Because I did it more than I should share.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay. In your opinion, what's the biggest change in you since becoming a grandfather?
Man, it's not just grandfather. I've told this before as well. Not having any sisters or daughters, and most of my little grandbabies are daughters. That actually has been, I don't know what it would have been like, because if it would have had like little grandsons, it would have been more familiar.
True.
It would have been more familiar. It's like, I know how to raise boys, so to speak. I mean, you wrestle with them, But the little girls it's like an eye opener, and it's awesome. It's amazing. So for sure, they've touched the, whether it be just whether it be just getting older or whether it be having granddaughters. But I mean, it's Tyler's joked. He's like, "Where's my dad, and what have you done with him?" It's like, this is not who raised me like a drill sergeant, and then now you're like just a softie with them.
I mean,
so it's pretty fun though.
I think I remember you turning around and telling James and I, it's a girl. And my words to you were, you're done for.
Oh, I am, and I love it.
It's the best.
I love it. I've never seen an eye roll though, so maybe as they get older and I see the eye roll.
She'll never give one to you. I don't think so. I don't think so.
I hope
no,
not.
Tyler might get a few. But
Tyler's going to get a few.
Yeah, he's going to get a few.
He's getting close already to get one.
That's so funny. Okay, how about if you weren't a pastor, what do you think that you would be doing career-wise?
Some type of business, probably.
Okay.
I mean, I still, even like talking strategic plans or talking with our businessmen or business people here just at lunches and stuff, it's still kind of fun to listen to.
Absolutely.
It's fun.
It's linear.
Yeah.
And so it's fun to see.
Yeah, and just strategy and preparation and forecasting and all that stuff is still kind of fun.
Okay, if the staff had a most likely to yearbook category, what would yours be?
I don't even know what is that. I didn't know how to answer this one. Most likely to. What do you think?
You weren't supposed to. This is not Ask Michelle.
Is it like high school, like most likely to do what? And it's saying now at my age, what am I most likely to?
Like most likely to leave your office and go visit the academy. That might be it.
Yeah, maybe.
There's an example.
We'll just leave that one.
Okay.
I think that's probably it. Just to go make sure that all the kids are good.
That's right. Wasn't there a snowball fight last year?
There was. I got pummeled.
Hammered.
Yeah, I got pummeled by the kids. Yep.
Okay, what about a recent hobby or a show you've gotten into?
That's too much information.
Okay.
No. Goodness, man. I've joked about when it was on. I know it's not something to brag about, but I enjoyed all the Yellowstone stuff. Sequels and 18, I get the dates mixed up, the 19, 20, whatever, and the 18.
It was a bunch of numbers.
The 18 whatever with Faith Hill and Tim McGraw.
Tim McGraw?
I liked it because a lot of their journey was place where I grew up, and it reminded me of if you go back, what is that, 150 years or whatever that is? Is that 150 years? How much stuff has changed?
Right.
I mean, like there's a scene where they're going across the Red River, and like the whole wagon falls in, and some of the cows die, and some little girl gets bit by a rattlesnake and dies, and all this stuff. And I mean, I four-wheel at that Red River, and it's just how different it is. Back then it was life and death, and how I will, and it showed how ruthless. If you were a guy taking your family, especially in that case, McGraw was had a wife and I think two daughters and a son. But I'm like, you had to be. I can't even say it here on this podcast. If you to protect them, I mean, you had to be
a bad man.
You had to be a bad man, and that's fine. Your job is to protect, but you don't put up with anything from anybody back then. You don't really do it now either. But anyway.
Okay, a couple more. Okay. What is your favorite book of the Bible to preach?
This is not meant to be quaint. It's typically the one I'm doing at the time.
Yeah.
That's true. It is because I'm trying to learn. It's like right now, even though it's in the book, but right now, for the last 4 days, all I've been thinking, or really the last 10 days, all I've been thinking about is really self-reflecting and some stuff you sit in for a long time. But I can't get away from Revelation 2:4. That's like, this I have against you, that you have abandoned the love you had at first, and letting that sit and simmer. The most surprising one that I enjoyed was a couple years ago when we did the book of Psalms for 4 months.
That's true.
I didn't think I would like it that much because it's all about feelings and yada, yada, yada. But what it did for our church and for me about being a worshiper was revolutionary.
It was.
And that surprised me.
Yeah.
On how much that was enjoyable to go through the different Psalms. So that was the most surprising
That's so good, so good. If you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be? And you get to pick the younger, like what age?
Like how younger?
Yes.
Yeah. The preacher answer would say, and this would be true for sure, I would learn how to pray more. Because that's, I study my Bible and I share my faith pretty naturally and pretty, like you said, we were talking about how you would love to, you can go deep and that's part of your personality. That's kind of part of mine. But being quiet and enough to, whether it be going in the woods or whatever, and really, really praying more consistently. I mean, I pray all the time now, but not like especially back, when 30 and you were, I'm still super driven, but then it was like blinders and nothing at all gets in your way and you kind of get out of balance. And that's what happens. So that's what I tell them was like, man, you need to hit your face, put your face to the ground more than you did, particularly in your 30s and 40s.
I might be right there. Okay, what's one thing about following Jesus that has only become more real or precious to you with time?
Nothing brand new, but I love the word more than I did even back. It is so, again, like the Revelation 2:4, I've known as you have, and you've known that, Ephesus, but the way that the God takes what you're studying, and if you are leaving remotely open, it's like new stuff, new applications coming up all the time. And, I think looking back, how God teaches you how to communicate differently. You go back, the way I try to preach now is very different. It's still, it used to be I would be overly concerned with it's got to be alliterated, the pathway of peace, the pinnacle of peace, the perception of peace, whatever. P is the easiest one the easiest letter to use on that stuff. But I think what the culture shifted where that can come across, there's nothing wrong with it, but being obsessed with it, it can come across a little wooden, a little fake. And so, but as far as the last 20 years has been how everything flows from an understanding and an application of the gospel. That's new. It's not new. It's 20 years new. Because I grew up when you were taught about basically the gospel's how you come to Christ, and then you add stuff onto it, 4 ways to be a better this, 6 ways to be a better this. And seeing it's the old imperative indicative that all the stuff he tells you to do comes from the overflow of what he's already done. And that's still amazing to me.
I love that. Well, I get the opportunity to tell you thank you on behalf of all of our church. We're coming out of Pastor Appreciation Month. It's November now, but we're still grateful for you. So thanks for preparing and just hearing from the Lord and giving it to us every single week because we need it and it's always appreciated.
Well,
so
it's good. It's the greatest church in the world.
Well, super fun way to end season 7 of the podcast. And it's also a little bit of a preview because today we asked you a bunch of questions and we're heading into a series where we're going to look at all of the questions that Jesus asked. So is there anything you want to preview for us about that series?
I was surprised there's 300 plus. No, we're not going to do all 300. We're going to do, I think, 7, so it's going to not really feel that Adventy, so to speak. But there's some. It hits everything from grace to compassion to anxiety to those questions. And he actually only answered like 4, maybe more, but he didn't answer a lot. Sometimes he would answer they'd ask him a question and he wouldn't answer it. He'd just ask a question to them. And so it's a remarkable way that he taught. So it's going to be great to look over I think 7 of those. If you want to read ahead, you can look at, for this week, Matthew 14. And that's a power-packed chapter. And we're just going to look at like verse 20. I think it's like 22 to 33.
I hope that encouraged you. I know it encouraged me. And so if you enjoyed this season, we'll be back in the new year for a new season. And if you are a fan of Christmas movies, we do have one bonus episode coming up. So hope that you will tune in for that. And so thanks for listening. If you live in Western North Carolina, remember that while the podcast is taking a break, we still gather every Sunday. And so go to biltmorechurch.com for service times and locations. As always, you are loved and sent.